Welcome, everyone. I am the Reverend Amy Johnson, and I serve as the Minister for Sexuality, Education, and Justice in the United Church of Christ. And we welcome you today to our Whole Lives Taking Flight webinar. I wanted to just do a couple logistics here and remind you that in this webinar format, there is this very handy little Q&A at the bottom. And so if you have questions as we're going along today, if you can put those into that Q&A portion rather than the chat, that would really help us to be able to make sure that we address your questions. Y'all, this is April, and April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I invite us to take a breath together and to really notice where our bodies are at this moment. Notice how your body feels sitting or standing or laying down wherever you are. And I would just like to invite you to take extra care of yourself today during this presentation and to know that this is such an important topic and we take it really seriously with our whole lives. And with that, I want to say that we are just so delighted to have Shael Norris with us today. Shael is the founding executive director of SafeBAE. BAE stands for Before Anyone Else. And she is going to give us some information about her work and what she does and all of these amazing resources that she has. And we are hopeful that this will help you if you find that you are working with youth who really want to dive deeper into this topic and have some agency and empowerment. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to you, Shael, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be here. I have to give a little bit of context. First and foremost, I have been working in sexual violence prevention for just about 28 years now. So I've been in one capacity or another, really dedicating my career to dating violence prevention, sexual violence prevention in every capacity and in some of the most irreverent ways. But I also actually grew up in the UCC church. My grandpa was a minister of the Williston West Church, was the longest stay in Portland, Maine. It is now no longer a church. It's actually a private residence now. So yes, totally breaking my heart. But that was also the founding origin for any of you who might remember for oh my God, now I'm going to space on it. Oh my gosh, Amy and I even, oh, Christian Endeavor. That was
Oh,
the founding
yes.
church for Christian Endeavor as well, which was another sort of youth engagement church program. And he helped to found Pilgrim Lodge, which is one of the UCC churches in Maine. So I got to go there too. So this is sort of full circle for me in a lot of different ways. I really hope Grandpa's watching. And
Oh,
so
and I just want to say, I forgot to say one thing, which is Melanie Davis from the Unitarian Universalist Association is not here with us this morning. She'll be back next month, but I did just want to shout that out and say, so for all you folks, please give us some grace with our UCC moment here that we had this connection. It was really delightful to find that out, Shael. So yeah.
yeah. So Andrea, if you want to help start sharing my slides for me, thank you so much for your technical assistance. Sort of jumping into SafeBAE and how we got started and what that work has been like for us, and really wanting to be in discussion with you all. I think, you are all on the front lines in one capacity or another. I'm seeing school nurses and, OWL facilitators. So really want to be in conversation with you about what it looks like to do this work and how we can just further, like Amy said, further empower young people to be involved in leading the change of their own culture. So, SafeBAE is the only organization of our kind. We were founded in 2015. I co-founded the organization with a group of sexual assault survivors. They all experienced rape at the age of 14 at the hands of friends and in their communities. And really the backlash and difficulty that they faced in going through their experience. And not only that, but just like sort of that lack of community support and what they faced in their schools, and really was the impetus for founding the organization, and that mindset of like thinking, how can we prevent what happened to them from happening to another person? So, really wanted to focus on this younger age demographic because we knew there was a lot of work happening on college campuses, but really, again, and I was doing a lot of that work on college campuses, but really felt like just there was just such an obvious and irrefutable need for the work to happen before they start experiencing these issues. I just spent 2 hours last night with parents in a middle school outside of Boston having these conversations. How can we talk to our kids about some of these issues preemptively and frame consent and things outside of intimacy so that there's a natural segue? So yeah, so focusing on middle and high school in in the United States predominantly, but also really thinking about where does that fit outside of school, right? Because a lot of you all are teaching in communities and churches, but sometimes in schools. So really a lot of our focus is just centering young people, making sure that our resources and materials all get in the hands of young people, all of which for every student engagement program we offer is entirely free. We want to make sure there's never any gatekeeping or obstacle to them accessing that information. So if we can jump to the next slide. Um, my co-founders, where we sort of got started, they were all the subjects of a Netflix documentary called Audrey and Daisy. It is still available on Netflix, but it came out in 2016, so it's not like top of the For You list sometimes. But I, again, we really felt it was an opportunity for their stories to help to galvanize these conversations. People who didn't necessarily understand the issue in a way, hadn't experienced it, hadn't had a loved one experience something like this, had no way of really understanding the incredible obstacles survivors were facing. And so we really wanted to utilize the platform that we knew would come with, the millions of viewers of Netflix to transform viewers into advocates and really put in their hands the tools to create change once they were really more awakened to what the issue was. So again, it is still available. I will say this before anyone jumps over to think about watching that tonight. It is an incredibly difficult watch. It is really harrowing to make the connections that the film makes, which I'll get into in a minute. But I think an important one. So just caveat to knowing going into that, it's a difficult watch. So on the next slide, again, really thinking about the ways in which, and I know I'm very much preaching to the choir, um, but these are some of the statistics. But I also think there is such a masking of these statistics, that such a taboo around young people and these experiences. We know the rates are incredibly hard. Secondary school is like the one of the most, hotbeds for harassment and that early breeding ground for a lack of respect and deciding who you're going to be as a friend and as an intimate partner takes shape in those years. And we know there's a lot of really problematic things happening in those years. Now, some of the time it's happening in adult to child perpetrators, but a lot of the time it is happening peer to peer because they think they understand something that they really don't understand comprehensively. And a lot of that thinking is like shaped on their consumption of media and the really poor messages they're getting in the media they're consuming. So at any rate, the I want to make sure that, we're really forthcoming with the data, with the understanding of what these experiences are, and knowing that whether it's a child to child perpetration or an adult to child perpetration, all of this work can be in a prevention capacity for both. So again, it's time to move away from our sort of normalized and antiquated stranger danger that is sometimes the way we pose this issue to kids. And be more authentic to the actual experiences and what we know the statistics are. So in the next slide, I also want to make sure that we really highlight too that the CDC does their youth risk behavior survey every year. And in 2023 was really the first time the CDC sounded the alarm quite clearly. They were saying that they were seeing in that reporting, which only in more recent years even included things like relationship abuse or non-consensual acts, they were starting to see a big uptick in girls in particular, female identified students, reporting an increase in sexual violence experiences, as well as an increase in suicidal ideation and really negative mental health outcomes. So, for this is the first time that the CDC connected those two issues and said it is intrinsic to the experiences of sexual assault survivors at this age to experience suicidal ideation. Now, I'm going to tell you, and probably again, preaching to the choir, that I have yet to meet a young survivor who doesn't experience suicidal ideation. The CDC isn't going to release information saying that 100% of, young people that experience assaults have suicidal ideation, but I think anecdotally we know the problem is really drastic and it's deeply impacting kids in a way that truly is life or death. So I think the more serious and clear understanding that we have of this as a public health issue and as a mental health issue, the more emphasis and the more priority we'll get to start to see in schools, in environments where kids are living, so that we can, I think, better accommodate the needs of students. We need to take it out of this siloing it's been in as a gender violence issue and start to realize it's not a gender issue exclusively. It really is a public health issue because of the rates and serious outcomes of the experiences. So again, really wanting to emphasize that there has been a bit of a shift there in understanding the impacts. So in our next slide, um, this is where I want to sort of talk to you about our full spectrum approach. Again, understanding that not all of you are necessarily working in school settings, but really wanting to make sure you're clear on the way in which we've been doing this work and how we've tried to and made sure that our approach is responsive to the research that's out there. There's actually a tremendous amount of research, because it's not that we are just all of a sudden out of thin air for the first time creating healthy relationship programming. That's been done for a very long time. We know that. But we also know we need to look to the data as to why it's not necessarily as effective as it needs to be. And really, that data is very clear in pointing us in a direction of needing to have like a full spectrum approach, not a one-off approach, right? We so commonly see like an assembly or a very short touchstone in a health class on healthy relationships. And also just as important, so multiple messages and times that we're seeing this and integrating these conversations throughout developmental years. Multiple times we're seeing the messages, but also multiple messengers. We always see adult created content delivered by adults. So that's why I wanted to really be in audience with all of you, because you also have the opportunity to put tools in the hands of kids who are interested in this work and passionate in wanting to be advocates themselves. So we know that the additional piece to multiple times that they're getting these messages, multiple messengers. We want adult delivery. We want content created by and with adults, but it absolutely has to involve children as well. Children have to be in the process of developing resources as well as delivering them. That peer-to-peer capacity is going to be a game changer for how they really we really start to see increases in not just attitudes and understanding, but in their actions as well. So when we talk about the spectrum approach, we really start with students. That engagement, we train students as peer educators. We provide opportunities for them to have a school club or create club resources where they do awareness raising activities. But then again, in a school setting, we really want to look at faculty and staff training. How can we be trauma informed? How can we make sure that we message ourselves as a safe person to disclose something to? Because kids are going to the first people they're going to report to are going to be their peers. So we need to make sure peers are trained as first responders in knowing how and where to report and get access to healing, because that's how we close that gap between things happening and the negative mental health outcomes. But we also need to make sure that the adults in the building know what process is in place, what does mandated reporting look like in their state, and how do we make sure that then the administrators in the buildings are really informed in how to um, conduct investigations, as well as provide like trauma-informed response and access to healing for not only the survivor, but the perpetrator as well. So it's another huge piece that I feel like has, we really came to terms with the fact that that's a hugely underserved population, but we know a few things. We know The vast majority of perpetrators in this age group are unwitting perpetrators. They all think they're masters of consent and know almost nothing because it's based on what horrible media they're consuming. And they all we do have this incredible opportunity at this point to interrupt that trajectory of negative behavior and reduce recidivism. So again, we just kept seeing over and over and over again. There's a friend group. One person in the friend group harms another person in the friend group. The friend group fractures. They either believe the survivor and absolutely cancel that person who has been accused, or they gaslight the survivor and believe that perpetrator or accused perpetrator. And that's actually serving no one. So if we can provide a space where we say outcomes don't always match intention, people can unintentionally cause harm and still take accountability for it, still try to say, I'm sorry, and I really want to make sure I don't do this to another person. Because that's what we kept just hearing from kids was, I just want them to say they're sorry, and I want them to not do it to anyone else. So if we're really serving that population with what they say they most want, then we need to provide restorative justice solutions in the way of an accountability training. So that is what we provide to accused and perpetrators, oftentimes administered in a school setting. It's also considered a um, alternative solution, like resolution in a Title IX investigation, which is supposed to happen in school settings, although now without the Department of Education or Title IX, there probably won't be those things in the immediate future. So again, we're constantly adapting and having to reshape and reframe what we're doing in some level of responsiveness to the ever-changing climate, but at the same time, we know we still have a lot of resources to keep kids safe, to be, to do best practices in school settings and in settings where kids are functioning, while we await any support there might ever exist again from the federal government. We can't and shouldn't be waiting for that. Um, so that's when we actually look at policy reform with schools as well. And again, any setting where you're looking at congregating of children, how can we make sure that there is a robust sexual misconduct policy with restorative justice solutions, and that can be as trauma informed as humanly possible to make sure that we are putting tools in the hands of anybody who's in these situations to be as informed and as robust as possible in that trauma informed response. How do we make sure they access healing? How do we make sure there's redemption opportunities? How do we try to reduce recidivism? Those are all such big pieces of the puzzle, and it's a massive undertaking. So I don't want to like de-emphasize that in any way. There's no school that's just their doors flying open and saying, we're doing all of this today. We work really incrementally with our school partners. We study everything, absolutely fastidiously studying. I am not a researcher. I will never be a researcher. I do not pretend to know anything about research. I love finding people who know what I don't know and asking them for their help. So we partner really frequently with Dr. Lindsay Orchowski out of Brown University. She is, and I am biased, but one of the really truly top researchers in investigating and studying healthy relationship programming, all kinds of varieties of programming over the years to really investigate and understand the best practices out there. And she has been really instrumental in helping us better inform our work and tell the story of how our work has been impacting. So on the next slide, I think is our,
Can I just pop in here really
yeah,
quick
yeah, please do.
before Andrea moves us forward? I just want to say I was looking at this wheel and I think it's just so fabulous. And I'm going, yeah, in our whole lives, like we do a lot with the consent and healthy relationships part of our curriculum. It's good, it's robust, right? And we do have those educational resources, and we do touch some on the perpetrator situation. Not, I don't think enough, right? And like you're talking about, such an underserved population and so important. But I think like the other thing is I wanted to say, just like you were saying, we don't all work in schools, but I do think that like that student leadership engagement, what I've found over and over again, and I've heard this from other people who have engaged youth in Our Whole Lives program, is that they become these ambassadors.
Oh,
And they go out into their peer groups and like correct misinformation and talk to people about things. And so it's really lovely to see that. I think that faculty and staff response training and the policy reform, those are the things that those of us that are working in faith communities and churches and congregations, those are the things we need to be working on. Like, this is why we say you should really, if you're going to provide an Our Whole Lives program or an Our Whole Lives ministry, you really need a safe church or a safe congregation policy. And that should include, as Jill is talking, that should include what are you going to do with the perpetrator, the accused perpetrator? Like what kind of restorative justice is there for that? So just be thinking that way and be thinking like, how can you incrementally shift the culture in your church and your congregation to understanding how important it is to listen to people when they come to you, listen to youth especially and kids when they come to you and share information so that we can create this culture of consent that, like you said, goes beyond intimacy, but especially if there's anything sexually related that comes up. So I'll stop now, but I wanted to just
Oh,
pop
I love
it.
that. I think it's such a reinforcement. We're whatever spaces we're in. And again, if we really put this through the lens of a church community, we're not in a position in a church community to be casting people out. That is not what we do in a Christian setting. We can't be casting people out. We need to understand that if somebody's causing harm, it's coming from a place of have they experienced harm, right? Hurt people hurt people. Are they getting really toxic messages? One of the things I love to say in school administrator settings is we are out here punishing kids for violating somebody's bodily autonomy when we have never taught them about it in the first place.
Mhm.
How can we call ourselves educators if we're not doing that? At that point, we're just, I don't know, prison wardens. And
Yeah,
and I don't think that we can really correct the culture until we look at all aspects of how we're doing this work. We can't
yeah,
ignore it because that's not
right.
serving anybody, but we
Yeah.
do have to have those moments of redemption and we have to have those, and it's slightly controversial, but I say sometimes in some of our other settings like there's no rapist island. There is no luxury where with which we go, that is a 100% bad person. They belong over here. We won't have to see them again. That doesn't exist in our worlds. The people that are causing harm are people who sometimes do not realize they are doing it and sometimes do realize that they're and intentionally cause harm, but need tools to redeem themselves, need tools to heal so that they don't continue to cause harm themselves. So I do think it's a shift in thinking, but it's definitely a shift in culture. But there's so many different cultures. Think about camp settings. I think all the time about how important camp settings are. I spent a lot of time in church camp as a child. Church camp is a hotbed for some children, just navigating intimacy in a different way and in a different setting. And I think we do have a tremendous opportunity to provide a really safe environment to talk about these things. But then, to your point, we need to make sure we have really important safeguards in place.
Yeah, because I think I've seen this happen in churches and in congregations. I think people are very much and particularly I'll speak to the Christian context, like, oh, we need to be forgiving and these are beloved members of our congregation. And I think that that's all true, but I also think it's so important to have boundaries for the survivors. So there's a whole like I'm trying to
You want to
remember
be forgiving without also saying forgiveness comes with changed behavior.
yes, yeah, exactly. So that's what I was going to say is like we can um recognize people as beloved and worthy of dignity and who they are is beloved and that is all fine, but that doesn't mean that any behavior is okay, right?
Yeah.
Like so there still is opportunity to not, as you said, cast someone out, but also put some boundaries around how that person is going to be able to interact in this particular congregation at this moment. And if somebody is really resistant to that, then that is a red flag where maybe they need to not be participating in on site, right? Maybe there's virtual participation or other ways that we can have boundaries. So I just wanted to be clear about that I think that and there's a question in the Q&A that we'll get to in a minute, like how do we do this restoring? But I'm gonna let you keep going and we'll get to that in a little while.
Yes. Okay. So next slide is, so recapping, these are all the things that we cover. To Amy's point, right? Um, OWL really covers a lot of things, but this is an opportunity to really look at, are there more in-depth pieces? I'm going to give you a little bit of preview of some of the short format video content that we create. We create all of our resources really with students leading the charge. We bring in experts to work with students and review student creation. And but it really is centered around kids saying, these are the things we want to cover. This is how we want to cover them. And in our short format videos, kids write, produce, star in, cast their school administrators. It's wild. I always say I stand in the back and buy the pizza when we're creating some of this content, but that's what makes it so authentic to their experiences. So all of that short format video content was created either in-house, or we actually did a few in partnership with Teen Vogue, which was a great opportunity for us. But all of that is embedded in this content so that we're not, again, really static. It's not this, kind of snooze fest. It is an opportunity for all kinds of delivery of the content in a way that helps to keep it a little bit more alive. And so when we look at our healthy relationship curriculum, the curriculum and the peer educator training are all the same topics, all the same 15 modules. They're just different delivery. The peer educator training is meant to be self-guided. So it's virtual. As I mentioned, it's free and it's self-paced. So kids can go through it, at their own pace. They can pick it up and put it down depending on what they like topic they might be more drawn to. And all of that video content is embedded in there and they can really like walk themselves through it. Whereas the curriculum is much more much more of the slide content from the peer educator training is pulled out and put into a facilitation guide. So again, so it really is meant to mirror each other so that we have, again, those multiple messengers still hitting on these topics, but say, again, in a school setting, say the health teacher is covering consent, but kids are maybe doing a presentation on bystander intervention or healing after sexual assault or things like that. So these are all the different topics. And again, I would love to see and know that these are all resources for you that you can use in any capacity that most helps you. These are also resources we provide to kids so that they then have that opportunity to jump in. And we've also broken down, because again, we know that there's not a lot of, this is a lot, right? No health teacher is going to get to integrate everything. So we've also taken another tack with like, there's this long curriculum, and then we've also taken each one of our short format videos, which are like a few minutes, everything from like 45 seconds to like I think 7 minutes long, and broken those down into just the video with a teaching guide with the video. So you can kind of utilize resources in one of two ways: full curriculum, so you have access to everything, or broken down into some of those short videos. So each one of those like has like an annual licensing fee, but we also do work sliding scale. We really want to work with anybody who wants to work with us, so we will make it work. But yeah, so there's an annual licensing fee for each of them. And on the next slide. So then when we're talking, just to revisit about the ways to engage kids. So we have a school club model. Again, that can be a club that certainly lives in, youth groups. I know I spent all of my teen years in youth groups. And so if kids want to lead a youth group that they're doing awareness raising activities and really thinking about how to integrate some of the messages and the things that we do, then the peer educator training. And then I also just wanted to make sure I shared with all of you that we do a Summer Activist Institute. We are just, as of this morning, opened up our applications to our 2025 Summer Activist Institute. It's going to be held at Manhattanville University in partnership with their Design for Creative Thinking. And we are so excited to be on this beautiful campus. It's in Westchester, and a gorgeous, quiet, very actually rural campus. And so we get to bring 25 kids all together for 3 days. We do really intensive work with them above and beyond the peer educator training. We bring in partner agencies to do some delivery on different things. And they really get to build community with one another, because so oftentimes they're passionate about this work, but they don't necessarily have a lot of peers in their hometown communities to be passionate about this work with them. So we're really building community among these kids who want to do this work. They want to, so many of them go back and they immediately want to petition their schools to reform their policies or sort of build momentum in their schools. And so the structure of the Summer Activist Institute is for every 5 kids, we have a college student mentor that gets 5 kids that they mentor prior to the institute, during the institute, and then for the entire year after. As they become our fellows, we want to make sure that they have resources and support and anything they need from us to be successful as they go back into their communities. So it's a really unique and fun opportunity. And yeah, so we're excited for that. So please don't hesitate to share that with the kids in your lives. And then in terms of the certified peer educator training, I also just wanted to like reiterate, we have now just under 2,000 kids from 45 states that have taken this training. So that in and of itself, with a non-existent marketing budget, really shows the power of how much kids want to be involved in this work and how how really truly engaged and interested they are in finding the resources that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get. Amy, you had something?
Yeah, I just wondered if there was a link for folks to be able to share about how to share with folks if they want it, if they know youth that would like to apply, and what the window for application is.
Yes, it's this month, and I will make sure I put the link to applications in the chat in just a
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
Okay.
I,
Um, and then so in the next slide, okay, there's a link to the applications.
thank you.
Of course. Oh, so it may start playing on its own, but this is I want to just
My
show you
name's
an
Charlie
example of
Coleman, and my sister was sexually assaulted by a group.
Oops.
oh,
You can go, I think you can go ahead, Andrea. Is that what you're gonna say, Shay?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go ahead.
My name's Charlie Coleman, and my sister was sexually assaulted by a group of guys that I thought were my friends and left to die in my yard in sub-freezing weather. They were my teammates. I ate with them at lunch. I had classes with them 3 or 4 hours a day. They were close enough to me, they know they could have called me and I would have came and got her at 2 in the morning or whatever time. But instead, the guys, they sat there, they kind of egged it on, they took picture and video, and they let it happen. The idea of masculinity, people think that you have to dominate everything in the world. You have to dominate in the workforce. You have to dominate in the weight room, the ball field. You don't want to hear no. People that don't take no for an answer, people that succeed in life. You strive for the best all the time. You got to prove your masculinity. We see comments being made about women and saying, oh, it's just locker room talk, boys will be boys. That's accepting the culture as it is and allowing it to grow. I don't think being a bystander that doesn't do anything is okay. People think that's the right thing to do because when we were growing up, everybody had heard, mind your own business. We're not taught to step in and defend somebody who can't defend themselves. Even there are situations where girls more open to their sexual life or something like that. Some people don't think twice about it because they're like, oh, well, she normally goes and sleeps around. When you categorize them, it doesn't mean that they want that just based on what they're wearing or what they've done with other people in the past. It doesn't matter who they are. They're a person. Everybody says no means no, but it goes a lot deeper than that and people don't realize it. If someone's quiet or doesn't flat out say yes or engage themselves in it, you can't say that they're consenting because you can take the girl back to your room or go back to her room with her. And if she wakes up the next day and that's not something she remembers or remembers consenting to or wanted, then you are very much part of the problem. If there's one thing in this world I think that young men need to learn to carry on through their lives is respect for another. Start by talking about, you have to respect this person. It's not about what she's wearing. If the kid comes home at 13 years old and talking with his friends about, oh my God, did you see her butt today in social studies? Or the volleyball team would go on their daily run past the field and they'd be like, oh my gosh, those spandex kind of thing. It's people talk like that. It's actually more disgusting than we see it as. And it happens all too often because we haven't been taught. It is up to the parents, the role models, the older brothers, the older sisters, to start putting these ideas in kids' heads that this is not a thing that's okay.
So again, I really just wanted to give you a bit of a glimpse into some of that content creation. I think it's so important. This is just like really gives you an idea of I think the powerful voice somebody like Charlie has, right? And to put it in context that I think more boys will identify with, more people will be able to like contextualize this in their own personal spaces and feel that they have the opportunity to be that active bystander, to be outspoken and to I think just be more empathetic if it's not something that they've experienced to really better understand. So, and we need as many of those spokespeople as possible to be, to be able to, I always say, if we put the exact same script in my hand or in Charlie's hands, it's going to hit real different coming out of Charlie's mouth. And that's really important. We need multiple messengers. And that's one of the things I talk about with the school club is I'm always like, don't make it part of your like feminist club at school. We need to make it part. We actually go to the National Honor Society conference every year and really promote embedding SafeBAE Club programming into National Honor Society and school council work, because those are student leaders, and there is a wide variety of gender representation among those student leaders. And then we have something that I like to call accidental activism happen, which is when kids who do not otherwise see themselves as necessary or a part of this work or impacted by any of this, regardless of statistics that they probably haven't heard in the first place, they have an opportunity to then go, oh, maybe this does like impact. Maybe I do have a voice in this that I didn't realize I had. And then all of a sudden they have a platform in, in their leadership position in student council to begin with, to say, this is an issue I actually care about. This is an issue, the more I start listening, that many of my friends have been impacted by, because find me a friend who hasn't been harassed minimally. And then they find themselves all of a sudden able to really center themselves in the work. And that is critically important. Those are the inroads we need to make, because we're asking kids to spend their social currency on something that's not ever been really asked of them before. This isn't an issue that, if we want them to take it on, we need to make it seem interesting, make it seem even in some ways like cool to them, right? I'll get into a whole other discussion about social media and why we have to have a really important and robust presence on social media, because there's a clout that comes with that, as the kids would say. Clout is important, and clout is something that they is a currency of theirs. So if we want them to be actively involved in this work and care about it as much as we know is important for them to care about, then we have to make it authentic to their experiences and make it really something that appeals to them to be a part of. So I think Charlie, does a better job than I could ever explain of like how to find that entry point with kids. So, so in the next slide, this is another thing I wanted to emphasize, just to kind of give you a glimpse a little bit into some of the layers in which we sort of stack these things. Stories of Consent is an interactive art project that is, again, integrated into some of those awareness raising activities that we do. It is one of my favorite things because it really takes a positive slant on things. It is an opportunity for kids to share their stories that have been positive. How did somebody really honor when they saw you maybe be a little bit hesitant? Honor that moment, even though it wasn't verbal, to take a pause and make sure they had ongoing consent. Where are the things that people have really had positive experiences with partners, so that we can start to envision how we can embody that in our partners and our intimate relationships moving forward. So yes, absolutely. We will include all the resources, and you can find all of the stuff on our site as well. So Stories of Consent is, as of right now, sort of a built where Instagram account and interactive thing where people can print them out and then invite people in their school or community settings to add their stories, positive stories of consent. We are also now in the process of developing, sort of bringing that into a more 3D concept, where we're collecting videos. We're going to be starting to collect video stories of consent, where we actually overlay them with animation, so that we're really kind of bringing them to life, and again, inviting more people to share those stories so that we can really uplift them and create those positive stories. So again, it's another layer of how do we get kids engaged? How do we create interactive moments that are going to keep them connecting with each other and just raising awareness and changing culture? That, believe it or not, little things like this start to change and reprogram that culture in a way that otherwise just wouldn't be relevant to them. So next one, I'm trying to remember what I put next. It might be a video. Oh, okay. Nope. Oh, it's just bouncing ahead on you. So the certified peer educator training, again, this is, I just want to touch very briefly on that. It does actually come with a certification. So even if kids are maybe taking it collectively, we ask them to register independently so they can get that final certification. And just as a side note, we really do leadership development as well. It's not like in our mission, but it is really innate to our work. We encourage them to add that certification to their LinkedIn, and then they all look at me like I'm insane and call me a boomer. And I say, no, believe it or not, your LinkedIn account, which you're going to help, and that's one of the things we do at the Summer Activist Institute. We create their LinkedIn accounts with them, and we help to upload their certification and have them connect with everybody that is connected to SafeBAE. So they list themselves as part of SafeBAE's team. They list their certification, and then we suggest to them that they make connection requests from everybody on our board of directors and everybody associated with our organization, because that's how we build a leadership network even above and beyond. And the adult allies that support our work, our board of directors and et cetera, and the kids who used to be kids doing our work and are now adults doing our work and still supporting our work, are their network. And so, again, that's another big piece of building that leadership pipeline. So wherever they go, we know they're ambassadors of this work and they're embedding that into their future. And I always say to kids, this is an incredible thing to list on your college resume. I cannot emphasize enough the amount of feedback we get from kids who apply to colleges who are absolutely blown away by the fact that they have this certification, because colleges want to know, and by the way, so do jobs, that not only are you not going to be a problem with sexual harassment or harm on campus, but you're actually going to be part of solutions. That's a huge layer of, I think, leadership and college and school and work readiness. So just want to make sure I emphasize that as well. I always say to kids, I don't care why you take it. I just care that you take it because you're going to learn something. So even if it's your, little overachievers padding their resumes. So, all right, next slide. So again, just touching on that restorative justice, accountability training, but I think I really covered that before, so we can keep jumping to the next slide. Yeah, and I think we really covered this before too. I just want to make sure we reiterate everything as we go through. So the consent curriculum and the sexual misconduct policy reform are again a piece of that adult ally engagement. And then next, this is also just some of the pictures of, will you pause that for me, Andrea? Thank you so much. Just pause for 1 second and then we'll let you play. All right, now I lost my train of thought on what I was going to say before, but so again, wanted to give you another example. This is a video that was created in response to a school visit. Kids were really saying one of the biggest and most pervasive forms of harassment and harm in their school was sharing of intimate images without consent. So we really realized that there was no resource out there that was really touching on talking about intimate image sharing, authentic to their experiences, and non-judgmental in its approach. So the kids wrote the script, they cast it, they directed it. My co-founder Ella graduated from LA Film School, shot this on set with these kids, and the two of the adults that appear in it are school employees that the kids recruited to do this work. So I just want to give you another example of some of the way in which we do this short form of video content creation. Okay.
Sharing sexual images is a choice, and it's one that basically every adult will tell you not to make. But it's happening, so let's make things super clear.
Sending or receiving nude photos, videos, or content of anyone under the age of 18 is legally considered distribution, possession, or reception of child pornography in every U.S. state.
If a teacher or school official finds underage nudes on your phone, they're required by law to report it to the police.
And seriously, guys, do not send nudes no one is asked for.
Sending nudes is a choice. You have to decide on your own, without anyone pressuring you.
Do I really need to say it again? Do not send nudes no one is asked for.
Before sending, consider how you would feel if somebody you didn't want to see your picture actually saw it.
Sending nudes can also result in...
If you don't send me nudes, I'll tell everyone what a bitch you really are.
Oh my god, Jessica showed the cheer squad your eggplant emoji pic.
We're not saying never send nudes. We just want to make sure you thought it through. Why are you sending it? Can you trust the person you're sending it to?
Do you feel pressured by someone to send one?
Are you sending them because you're afraid the person you're with will break up with you if you don't?
I also just want to remind everyone that if someone sends a nude to you and you send it to someone else without their permission, you're not only a total jerk,
but you're also breaking the law and could be placed on the registered sex offender list for life.
so think before you send.
Good.
So just a little backstory there too. I was like, can we call this a sexting diversion program? And the children were like, absolutely not. You are canceled. I first of all didn't know that there was a difference between sexting and nudes. So learning every day, and really deferring to their expertise because they were like, if we don't call this nudes, we're missing the entire mark. And just because you're trying to keep adults comfortable doesn't mean that needs to override the authenticity of kids' experiences. So I thought, and we made this in 2016. So this really predates anybody wanting to talk about consent or anything like this in schools. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a social media campaign. It is only ever going to live in our virtual spaces. And I am very pleased to report it is one of the #1 used resources in schools that we partner with and direct service agencies and things like that, because there really isn't anything else. And we know how pervasive this issue is. So I think, again, I think it just speaks to the power of kids knowing what they need, having the answers and some of the solutions to their own issues, and that adult allyship partnership where I can just sort of, I was like, oh my God, you're going to get me run out of town on a rail, but okay, you win. This is your issue. I stand down. I'm going to buy the pizza. You guys write the thing. And then here we are, pleasantly surprised. So I think there's, really opportunity for growth and restructuring of that leadership and that power into the hands of students, which is an uncomfortable space for some adults. So anyway, so next slide. And then I really want to jump to time with everyone to ask questions and feedback.
Yeah, there's a few questions in there, so.
Okay, perfect. So just touching on, again, we have been published in the Journal for Child Sexual Abuse with Dr. Ochowski, and we work in several states under Office of Violence Against Women grants and the CDC's RPE program, which now has been decimated as of yesterday. It's non-existent. So it's really, I think, imperative that we find new entry points, new ways to stay afloat in, again, as some of this funding is disappearing, find ways to partner with different agencies, organizations, direct service agents, all of you to continue this work, to continue to be able to fund things that allow our resources to be free with students. And so I am open to every idea for all of that. And we've got students from around the country that can do a lot of this delivery. And I certainly travel to every site I'm invited to. So again, just want to make sure that we're clear about all of that too. So in the next slide, just wanted to briefly, again, give you an overview of some of our efficacy data. So we take pre and post surveys from every kid that takes the peer educator training, and many of our school setting partnerships. We're able to do pre and post surveys with both students and faculty and staff in our delivery and partnerships with schools. So we have a lot of really intensive reflection on what we've been able to do. And again, if you're looking with the numbers with me here, like just seeing these incredible increases in their understanding of how to respond to a peer, their rights in school, healing options, these are the things that are really going to make the difference for not only prevention, but response. So I just can't encourage everyone enough. We are really starting to see a huge influx of consent curriculums and all kinds of, I think, what will be the future of sort of profiteering in this space, and invite lots of new ideas and opportunities to have these conversations. But I can't emphasize enough the need for digging into knowing if that program is working. That oftentimes I'll see schools who are just like, oh yeah, this person, and they offered this. And I'm like, is it evidence-based? Do they have data? Where are you making sure you're doing the work in the most responsive and data-driven way? Because otherwise we're kind of regressing back into that, okay, we're just going to do healthy relationship programming, even though we know it's not actually changing attitudes or actions. So I can't emphasize that enough. The more we can really focus on that aspect of things. Okay, so I think we're just about there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have social media. Please don't hesitate to follow. Encourage kids to follow. There is a tremendous amount of information they're going to get out of our social media, whether it's on TikTok, and you can go to the next slide, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. We're, disseminating, and LinkedIn too, but we're disseminating and sharing information depending on the audience, right? We're kind of curating Instagram to kids audience, curating Facebook and LinkedIn to more adult audiences, but just telling the story of where we're working, how we're doing that work, and just showing sort of like our travels to different sites, little snapshots of our resources, and then ways that people can get involved. That's the best way. We're sort of like moving away from a newsletter world and into a make sure you're following us world. So
Yep. Yeah, we
yeah.
are.
So
Yeah,
please ask questions. Tell me what
yeah, we've
fill in.
got some. We've got some. And Shael, just thank you so much. And just so you know, folks, we will have the resources mentioned will be in the follow-up email that you get. And if you don't get the follow-up email because maybe you didn't check, yes, I'd love to get emails from the UCC when you registered for the webinar. You can find them on the YouTube playlist, which is where this video will live, the recording of this video will live. And underneath, there's a place that I think it says more, and you can click on there, and then we have those resources listed there as well. So I will tell you that there is a call for you to go international because there's some folks here from Canada, and they are wondering if one of them is if you know of a comparable organization in Canada doing the work, or if any of the videos that you have speak to like Canadian laws and those kind of things. So those are a couple questions going on
No,
here.
super good question. Love, and I'm right on the border here. I'm up in
Yes,
Maine.
you are.
So, I always looking for an excuse to go to Quebec. So I think yes. So in terms of like an equivalent organization in Canada, I don't know of one. I've seen a handful of like sort of much more young focused consent education, bodily autonomy in like toddler and elementary years. And I'm not remembering that educator's name, but I don't know of an equivalent like sort of student engagement and leadership program in Canada. I would say though, everything that we offer outside of Title IX, is applicable anywhere. We definitely are collaborative and in conversation with a lot of organizations in like Australia and the UK that are doing a lot of similar work, and they're just so much more able to integrate this into educational settings than we are. The US is just not set up like that. So there is a lot of work being done internationally. And absolutely, I would say that everything is certainly applicable across the board. It's sort of universal.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we've run into too is like some of the laws about sexting and nudes and things are a little bit nuanced differently in some
Sure.
countries. So that's one thing to, I think I would say to our Canadian folks on here today that if you are interested in using some of the videos and that kind of thing, to just check and see how that would translate and if there are different laws where you are, and think about how, you know, if do you still want to use it and this make a caveat, or what would you want to do that, or you have a really great opportunity to make connections with Shael and partner to get some resources up there that are
Absolutely. I'm here for it. Again, it's really not for lack of wanting to partner internationally.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
kind of starting somewhere.
We do have a question about how to restore the group. Can you elaborate on how to restore a group if, like redemption, if there is someone who has been a perpetrator in the group? And
Absolutely.
just wondering what some specifics are about
Yeah.
that.
So the restorative justice tool that we created, the accountability training is what we refer to it on and specifics on our website. That is meant to be a self-guided tool. It's meant to be something that a school can like administer. We've actually had a judge administer it to a respondent in a case who was found guilty of sexually assaulting someone. So that's an interesting and again, that's a self-guided opportunity for self-reflection, but there's no reason that that can't be something that's a collective exercise. And I think the one thing I would point to, and again, it is built into the accountability training, the peer educator training, and the curriculum, is one particular model that's a module that is focused on how to respond if you've been accused. I think that for me is going to be, and that was entirely, I have to disclose that that was an add-on. That was not originally part of our certified peer educator training. It was something that was absolutely at the demand of our first fellows. Our first Summer Activist Institute fellows said, nope, you are adding this. We are going to, and they created it. God bless Google Docs and Zoom and all the ways in which we could work collaboratively with those kids. because they were like, this is something we want to make sure that as peers we can be responsive to, and that we can really reshape that, like sort of doubling down of like, I didn't do anything wrong, you can't pin this on me, and really be able to take the opportunity to be reflective. So what that particular module focuses on a handful of things: intent versus outcome, as I mentioned before, that we don't have to say like, oh, I absolutely intended to cause that harm, in order to still take accountability for it and be apologetic for it and be empathetic to the harm it caused, even if we didn't intend to. But one of the things we embed in there, and if you haven't read this book or seen this TED Talk, we embed um information and a clip from a TED Talk about a book called South of Forgiveness, and I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you.
For spelling.
South of Forgiveness. Okay.
And it is a book that was written by a survivor and her perpetrator. Many
Okay.
years after experiencing assault at the hands of her then boyfriend in high school, who was an exchange student, so ended up sort of leaving after, and very unresolved and very like no access to healing, not even really identifying that it was an assault, all of the things in her processing, she eventually reached out to him. And it turns out that he was really going through a whole self-processing as well, like carrying, knowing, but also denying that he'd caused that harm. And so they ended up writing a book together, and they do a TED Talk about the book, and it is an unbelievable masterclass in accountability. It's like he just is, in a totally non-defensive way, takes responsibility for the harm he caused, not understanding that he was causing harm when he was doing it, and the outcome and impact for him, that he spent so much of the rest of his early adult life trying to convince himself that he was a good person because he was carrying around the harm that he had caused. So I think that in it does a better job than anything else we could possibly have developed of that level of self-reflection. And so I think that's a really interesting um, tool to create conversation in a group where you would be doing this reflection. Create conversation, create like, and invite storytelling of like, because I always say, like, there is none of us who came through our early intimacy and even well into our adult intimacy where we didn't misstep,
Yeah. All right.
right? Like, like
Yeah,
causing
picture
harm
me as if
or
you're perfect, right? Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Glass house, that ultimately we are all in a position to reflect on places we could have done things better, or that we may have caused harm unintentionally, or even if we caused it intentionally. How can we take accountability for that? And how can we invite that, like I always say, the measure of your character is not that you never make a mistake, but how you respond to learning that you did.
I just feel like we could have a whole nother hour just on this, and
Yeah.
particularly like in this moment.
Yeah.
In this moment that we're all collectively in, and I include our Canadian neighbors in that because I know you've been sucked into the chaos that we're
Yeah.
all experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And I think that, when we talk about consent sort of writ large, like what does a consent culture look like? And none of us are living in that right now.
No.
And to say, like,
Certainly not an
how,
accountability culture.
this idea that if we are teaching young people about accountability, that is so just so amazing and life-giving and important work right now. So I appreciate that question, and I wish we could keep going forever, but we're coming to the top of the hour. There's one other question in the Q&A, Shael, about neurodivergent teens and adults, and just so knowing that there's a wish for some of this to be tailored to them, to that particular group. So
Agreed.
just know that that's information out there. I
No,
want
it's super important, and it's something it is in our sites. I think we
Yeah.
need to do it really responsibly and well, but it is super necessary.
So thank you again so much for being here with us today. Y'all, I hope that this has been helpful for you. There will be some resources again sent out and also posted on this video recording. I want to invite you to the Next, Our Whole Lives Taking Flight, which will be in May. I believe it's May 7th, and it will be myself and Kirsten Defer talking to you about our new upcoming Under Your Wing video expansion to some videos for parents for 4th through 6th graders. And we have them for the K1, and we've done a taking flight on that before, so you can hear about our 4th through 6th grade material next month. Shael, real quick before we go, can you put contact info in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we send that out to everyone in case you have follow-up questions, in case you have an amazing funding source you'd like to connect Shael with.
And I will co-write grants with anybody. So
and if for those of you that cannot see the chat, that contact information is info@safebae.org. That's safebae.org. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.